I'm really happy you brought this up because it's something I wanted to talk about. About a week and a half ago, I did a tour of this, what I would call an internment camp, but it's an immigrant detention center in the middle of the Everglades in the state of Florida, being operated by the Florida Division of Emergency Management, which is tasked with keeping our people safe during a hurricane. And they're spending about $450 million of the $500 million cap that they can spend to prepare for hurricanes on the detention center. So hurricane comes up in the Gulf tomorrow, barreling towards Florida. They have to go back to the legislature and spend time doing that instead of taking care of the people of our state. But that's a whole other thing. I want to talk about the lack of transparency and fairness we're seeing in this because I don't want to see this exported across the country. The most recent example is this Everglades facility. Here's some examples. CDR Health, which has donated about $4 million to Republicans in Florida over $500,000 to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis a few months ago, won a $17.5 million contract for this specific facility. IRG Global, which has given $400,000 to Governor DeSantis and the GOP, including $10,000 to the Florida GOP just hours before they were awarded a $1.1 million contract for this immigrant detention center. They're running the camp operations, and they got another $5 million contract later in a few weeks after that. None of these businesses hired to build, staff, and run this immigrant detention facility have any prior experience with immigrant detention centers and no prior experience with anything in corrections facilities or anything around that. This is costing us 8 to 10 times what it usually costs to house a typical inmate. And I would like to enter into the record unanimous consent on this article from the Orlando Sentinel.
Without objection.
Yeah, it's Florida's disaster pipeline funnels millions to politically connected contractors. Look, I mean, and I don't care what party you're in. This is something we should all, and I don't care what your politics are, this is something that should worry all of us. When in the state of Florida, the money set aside to protect us from hurricanes is being used for what I would say is a politically motivated promise in this mass deportation thing. But not even just that, but the money that's being awarded to these contractors is not being done in a transparent way. It's completely bypassing the typical process you go to have a contractor in the state of Florida, and then it's seemingly going to people who've donated millions and millions of dollars to the guy making the decisions. And so this is something that should be on the mind of all people across the country, and every Floridian, especially as we talk about procurement and as we talk about third-party contractors. Thank you, and I yield back. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to shine light on a moral atrocity going on in my home state of Florida, an immigrant internment camp that Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and his administration have propped up in the middle of an abandoned airfield deep in the Florida Everglades, a place where nearly 1,000 humans are being forced to live in a tent city in the middle of the hot Florida summer, hot sun, where folks are not getting enough food, detainees are exposed to the heat, wildlife, mosquitoes that can potentially carry disease, stripped of their civil rights, and as of this past Saturday, cut off from legal counsel. And while this humanitarian nightmare unfolds, soulless politicians like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, grin and call this place, I'm actually not even going to use the name that they're calling it and dignify it, but they sell merch, they make jokes, they print hats with cartoon alligators dressed up as ICE agents, and they laugh as people and families are suffering. I can tell you the amount of constituents I've heard from. Their dad is in this facility. I haven't heard from them for weeks. No one with an eyes and a conscience can ignore what this really is. It's an internment camp, a place full of people who look like me, Latinos, Haitian men, subjugated to inhumane conditions under the guise of immigration enforcement. And it's disgusting. It's un-American. It demands oversight. Members of Congress have a legally protected right to conduct oversight of immigrant detention centers. That means that we have the power to show up unannounced, as I have on other occasions, and see what's going on with our own eyes. That was my plan and the plan of my fellow Florida congressional Democrats last week. We were ready to do our jobs. Somehow, word got out to the DeSantis administration that we were showing up, and so they decided to invite us at the same date and time we were going to show up anyway. But we took them up on that. we went in the facility, and here to talk a little bit about my experiences in there. You know, the state of Florida and DHS, they got wind of our visit. They got scared. They invited us. And of course, what we got was a sanitized version of the way things usually are. But even that sanitized version, to me, was a poor conditions. You know, I also heard reports that the night before we showed up, magically the detainees got their first shower they had in a while. Magically, they got one of their first, actually, good meals. And it just shows why the unannounced visits are so important to see how things really are. But I got to tell you, a clean cage is still a cage. And at the end of the day, in this facility, we have 32 men being crammed in each cage, about 4 to 6 cages in each tent. Each tent, you know, we brought a thermometer in there, was about 84, 85 degrees, of course, in the hot Florida sun. You know, I'll always remember walking in that front door and looking at these gentlemen in there, everyone screaming for help. One guy asking me to call his family. He was screaming out a phone number. I couldn't hear him. I couldn't get all the digits down. Only 3 sources of water per cage. They're the spigots connected to the toilets, much like the jail units we've seen. But usually in those jails, it's one of those units for 2 to 4 people, not 3 for 32 people. But I got to tell you, one of the most emotional parts for me was when we looked at the cages from afar. We weren't let in the tent, but standing at the doorway, hearing those chants, freedom, freedom, libertad, libertad, people yelling. This isn't security, it's cruelty. It's not immigration policy, it's dehumanizing people. You know, Trump said this was about keeping people safe. He said it's about going after criminals, but we all know is one big lie. Hundreds of the people being held in this internment camp have no criminal charges. I won't stay silent while our government turns the Everglades land, of which protecting it used to be a bipartisan thing, and the state is spending $450 million from our Division of Emergency Management to run this internment camp. And we're in hurricane season. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, I don't care what you are. The state, the Division of Emergency Management has the ability to spend up to $500 million without going to the legislature in emergency money. They're going up to $450. We're about to go into hurricane season, which means that when a hurricane is barreling towards our state, they're not going to be able to do what they need to do immediately to save lives because every minute matters. They'll have to go back to the legislature and beg for more money because they spent $450 million of our money on a damn internment camp in the middle of the Everglades. Along with partners, we're going to do something about it. Of course, litigation has been filed. I think what's important for people to know is that this is a federal facility. We were told that ICE is calling the shots here. Federal facility run and operated by the state. I yield back.